Okay, so we're going to do an overview of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis, it's converting light energy into chemical energy, usually in the form of food. Okay, so what type of organisms can do photosynthesis? Cyanobacteria is an example. Other protists, plants are the main ones that we're going to think of, algae, and some purple sulfur bacteria can also do photosynthesis. So where does photosynthesis occur? So where on the plant, it's happening in the leaves. And a little overview of what a leaf looks like and the cells involved. We have different layers of cells on leaves. We have the cuticle, which is that waxy outer layer of the leaf. The mesophyll, which is where chloroplasts are mainly going to be found here. And then it's like the mesophyll is the middle of the leaf. And then we have stomata, which are pores on the bottom of our leaves, and they allow for carbon dioxide to enter and oxygen gas to exit. Here's some pictures of stomata. And think about for a second, well, why can't stomata just stay open all the time? Because we do need that gas exchange. But the reason is they can't just be open all the time is because then it makes it so that the leaf is more prone to lose water, which is important for the cell as well. So we need them open so that we can let gas in and out, but we also need to have them closed as much as possible to prevent losing too much water. Okay, so inside the leaf, we're going to have those chloroplasts, and that's where photosynthesis is going to occur in plants. Okay, so remember before last unit, we talked about the structure of the chloroplast. It's got two membranes. It's got the stroma, which is the fluid where there's going to be enzymes and different things to have chemical reactions take place. We have the thylakoid, and we'll talk more about this unit. And that's where the electron transport chain and ATP synthase is going to kind of live. A granum, or grana, is a stack of thylakoids. And the reason we have each of these kind of surrounded by its own membrane, because again, it's increasing our surface area to volume ratio, so we can have more reactions take place. The lamella is like these connections, which I don't know that will come up. Okay, chlorophyll is a green pigment that is found in the thylakoid membranes of plants. So it's found in the thylakoid, and we'll talk more about its function later. Okay, the overall chemical equation and reaction for photosynthesis is 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O plus light energy, and sometimes this is drawn just over the arrow instead of in the equation itself, but it yields C6H12O6, which we do need to know that's glucose, and 6O2. Okay, so basically what we are doing is we are taking this water and we're breaking it apart and using those electrons, and we are rearranging these carbon dioxides to turn them into sugar or glucose. Okay, and we've talked about before about endergonic and exergonic reactions. So this is an example of an endergonic reaction because we need energy being put into the system. The overall equation here, again, just showing that the carbon is being used in our glucose. The oxygen, some of it is used in glucose, some of that oxygen can be used in the oxygen in water. In the water itself, we have some hydrogen coming into the glucose and the water, and some of that oxygen is going to be released as oxygen gas. So that's how it's rearranging. We don't really need to memorize where all these arrows go, but just giving us an idea. So why are plants green? It is because of those chlorophyll pigments that are going to absorb different wavelengths of energy, of light energy. Okay, and so they are absorbing energy or light at all the different wavelengths, but they're reflecting that green. Okay, and there's actually different types of chlorophyll. They can absorb they're going to absorb violet, blue, red light, but they're going to reflect green, and they're located in the thylakoid. But in the fall, plants actually start breaking down that chlorophyll to save energy. And so we have the different types of chlorophyll that absorb different types of light. And so we can see here we have chlorophyll A, which absorb these different wavelengths of light. Chlorophyll B absorbs different wavelengths of light, And then carotenoids, it sounds like the word carrots because they're usually orange in color because of what colors they absorb and reflect. But they absorb different wavelengths of light as well. So chlorophyll A is blue-green, chlorophyll B is yellow-green, and carotenoids are our yellow-orange. And so because of this, we have different concentrations. Really, like all of these 3 different types of chlorophyll or light-absorbing pigments are found in all of these different leaves. They're just in different concentrations. So we have more chlorophyll B here, and it's been broken down by the time we get over here, and we're left with more carotenoids. So that way, the plants can still absorb different wavelengths of light. Okay, so photosynthesis is broken down into 2 big steps. We have our light reactions, and then the Calvin cycle, sometimes referred to as the dark reactions, or our light independent and our light dependent reactions. The photo is the light reactions, and the synthesis is the Calvin cycle. So the big thing for our light reactions is it's using light energy to be converted into ATP and NADPH using electrons from water. You can think of it as we're charging up these batteries. So ATP is like a fully charged battery, and NADPH is also, it just carries electrons instead of phosphates. But we're charging up our batteries because we're using energy from the sun. The Calvin cycle then takes that newly made ATP and NADPH from the light reactions, and they use it to make carbon dioxide, to turn that carbon dioxide into glucose. And these 2 parts of the reactions occur in different locations. So the light reactions occur in the thylakoid itself, because that's where the chlorophyll is. That's where we're absorbing light. And then the Calvin cycle actually occurs in the stroma, in that liquid fluid part inside the chloroplast. So we're using light and the light reactions in the thylakoid to produce ATP and NADPH, and then the Calvin cycle in the stroma to produce our glucose. Okay, I mentioned this a little bit before, but ATP versus ADP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, so it's got 3 phosphate groups attached, and adenosine diphosphate, so it's got 2 phosphate groups attached. And you can think of it like a charged battery. So ATP is fully charged. We can use that phosphate as a form of energy. And then if it's ADP, it's like a dead battery. It doesn't have that extra phosphate group added to it. NADP plus and NADPH are very similar. So you can think of NADPH as a charged battery. It's charged with a hydrogen ion. And NADP plus is like a dead battery. Okay, it's actually gaining electrons. This is sometimes referred to as an electron carrier because it's gaining electrons. The reason you might hear the word like it's a reduction because it's gaining electrons. If you ever hear that, you can remember the acronym LEO says GER for if there's a loss of electrons, it's oxidizing, and a gain of electrons, it's reducing. So this is gaining electrons to form NADPH, so that's a reduction. I don't know that the terms oxidize and reduction will come up, but if they do, you can use that acronym to help you. NADP and NADP, or NADP plus, sorry, I should have a plus there, and NADPH are used in photosynthesis, which conveniently that P can help us remember. P for photosynthesis. But there's also some compounds called NAD and NADH, which serve actually very similar functions, but they're going to be used in only cellular respiration, which we'll talk about later. So just a heads up. Okay, so light reactions, where does ATP and NADPH get made? It occurs in the chloroplast, and specifically in the thylakoid, the light reactions again. Okay, and then where does it actually get its mass from? The plant is actually getting its mass through carbon. Okay, and where does it get that carbon? It gets that carbon from carbon dioxide. So it's kind of weird to think about that the plant is actually growing and getting physically bigger with more mass because it's getting that mass from the air, from carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide is then incorporated into the plant, making it bigger. Okay, and then where does the glucose get made? That's going to happen again in the chloroplast, but this time in the stroma because that's in the Calvin cycle. Okay, and that's it for our overview of photosynthesis. I'll make another video going into more details on the light-dependent reactions and the Calvin cycle.